Hello, this is another episode of Conversations on AI, and today we've got a special edition talking about poetry and AI. So we've got three poets with us who are going to tell us all about their poetry and read it out, and we're going to have a fun night talking about poetry and AI. So without further ado, first I'd like to introduce Aneira. Aneira is a senior curriculum developer at Facing History and Ourselves. She's also a Sustainability and Behavior Change MSc student and a co-founder of Trust the People. Hello, Aneira.
Hello. Great to be here and excited for our conversations.
Excellent. Next, we've got Yasmin, Liverpool, and she works in responsible AI and agentic AI assurance. She is a former professional athlete and a sports aid committee. Hi, Yasmin.
Hi, lovely to see you again.
And Louise. Louise is a student of philosophy and computer science at Northeastern University.
Hi, yes.
Fantastic. So we're going to have a fun night. And Stella, we've got you and you're also a student at doing your MSc as well.
I am, yeah, student at Sussex doing my Masters in AI. I'm really looking forward to co-hosting this conversation with you, especially the AI person poetry kind of slam off at the end.
Let's start with you, Aneira. What we just do a plethora of things. Do you want to tell us what you do and what does your day look like and where does poetry fit into this?
Oh, that's a good question. My days generally look like me doing some research or writing. So in my job as an educational curriculum developer, I write and research content and create educational resources for teachers on a range of issues. And that's how I kind of came to learn more about AI and its impacts, I guess, on us, on the human brain, and also about its kind of environmental impacts. I basically create teaching resources for teachers and train teachers as part of my day job. And then my MSc also looks a little bit about sustainability and human behavior, and trying to understand why we are not taking the steps we need to take to confront the climate crisis and what is going on psychologically that is stopping us doing that. But yeah, it's also, I guess a lot of my stuff overlaps a bit. And then Trust the People is an organization that I co-founded in 2020 with some other amazing people, or some amazing people who are democracy practitioners. And we look at, I guess, a lot of the crises we're facing as a crisis of democracy, because if our democracy was fully functioning, then we would be putting in the safeguards we need to create a livable future for all. And where does poetry come into it? I just love writing. I've always loved writing. I've always enjoyed writing poetry since I was a kid. And in my spare time, I run a kind of community open mic night and share my poems in that, and also use poetry as a bit of a way to de-stress and a way to process what I think about the world as well. So I find it a really useful tool to just kind of like get my thoughts down and figure out what I think, and also, look at things that I find problematic or inspiring and find a way to engage with them through words. Yeah.
Fantastic. Just out of interest, do you use AI when you're doing your MSc?
No, I don't actually. And I find the ethical element of large language models seriously questionable, just in terms of how much they harvest other people's ideas without permission, and have done that, how much energy they use. I think they're quite predatory as well in how they're set up. So I look a lot into AI, I know quite a lot about AI, but I don't tend to use it because I have quite serious ethical concerns about it. And I also like using my brain. Like, I like having that difficulty of being like, oh, that's not coming to me right now. How can I figure out this thing? And I think that's the thing, that if we start really depending on these large language models, we're going to lose our capacity to do that. And and creating those neural pathways that might be hard to create initially, just because we're going to outsource a lot of our thinking. And I think that's terrible for us. Yeah. So no, I don't.
Yeah. And in your curriculum work, do you write anything that is AI related in terms of, AI responsibility, students' use of AI in an ethical way, and so on?
Yeah, so we have a unit on media literacy, and there's a kind of a lesson, a double lesson, so 2 15-minute sections on generative AI. And that's how I actually came to be kind of involved in the conversations on AI community, because I met Annabelle through researching that unit, and she really kind of gave me some incredible information and insights into AI and human behavior, because she's amazing and has 2 masters. So yeah, we do have a lesson that is on it for teachers and students that looks at how you can think about verification of the information that you can get through large language models, and then also thinks about the ethics of it as well. But from a standpoint of kind of creativity, and also how you can use AI as a thought partner. I mean, I think that, yeah, I'm quite skeptical of some of these large language models, but I do think that we can use them in ways that push us to think kind of beyond like the normal solutions that we're identifying. So we can use them as thought partners, but I think we need to be really intentional about that. And I feel like the use of them at the moment isn't that intentional generally. That's not to say some people aren't using them as thought partners.
Fantastic. Do you want to read out some of your poetry?
Oh wow, okay, yes. I will share. I'll share the poem that I shared at the event. Okay, so yeah, so this is about AI. Artificial intelligence, another example of humanity's negligence. We're outsourcing our minds, searching for answers in patterns and probabilities, not making contingencies, brushing genuine harms under a carpet weighted by profit. We need to be asking about water security, about the 6.6 billion cubic meter thirst of this novel ubiquity. We need to be asking about energy, power, and annual electricity use outstripping Japan's of 1,000 terawatt hours. And about the ethics of creating dependencies on large language models with suicidal tendencies, inbuilt biases, and parasitic propensities. And question, who's holding the keys? Do we really want gatekeepers who speed for bank balances, fame, glory, prestige? Altruism, pride, and wealth generation don't tend to have interlocked hands. Why don't we listen to the fables and stories, the myths, legends, metaphors that swirl in our psyches with warnings? What killed the cat? What did Pandora unleash? Achilles, so mighty and powerful except for that one tiny thing. Don't take a bite from the apple, Eve. Prometheus, leave fire alone. And Dr. Frankenstein, what have you done? We see ourselves, our species, as gods. Competing for pedestals, we gloss over our flaws, dazzled like Midas and Narcissus, falling in love with what glitters and intelligence we've made in our image, blindly praising the opportunities. The shareholders win, but water's polluted, trees are cut down, more carbon's emitted, workers and teens lose out. The gulf in pockets gets wider, rampant inequality that threatens democracy, an expanding chasm that some will fall into. But what can you do? There's always collateral damage. We're outsourcing our thinking, destroying grey matter, getting swept away by binary, losing the nuance and criticality that this moment needs, the ability to break out of patterns, evolve, not be trapped in probabilities and tired old thoughts dressed up in algorithmic possibilities by tech bros seeking legitimacy. Why don't we, like the Iroquois, think about the impacts of our actions 7 generations on? Stop looking at machines as mirrors. Step out from behind our desks. Reclaim our dopamine-addled brains and drop the ego-fueled thirst for greatness. and reflect on the magic beauty of existence. Remember our place as an animal, kind and Machiavellian, intelligent and foolish enough to extinguish it all. A young 3 million year old species on a wizened 4.5 billion year old planet in a universe 14 billion years old, in a cycle of expansion and contraction spreading into infinity. Let's remember who we are, where we've come from, and develop a bit of humility, understand our interconnectivity and the consequences of the actions we take, the choices we make, and ask, do we want our intelligence to be artificial or creative, conscientious, ethical, authentic, collective, rooted in care and altruistic? Artificial intelligence, another example of humanity's negligence. It's up to us to decide.
Fantastic. That was amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. How does that feel reading that out?
It feels like capturing a lot of different things that I think about AI in quite a kind of concise way, and thinking about a lot of things that I don't just think about AI, about human behavior as well. So when I read it out, I guess I appreciate the complexity of the issue, and I also reflect on what a strange species we are, what a strange and fascinating species we are. And then also the fact that actually we do have agency, like we're shaping this world, and we can decide what we do with it. So yeah, it kind of feels like it helps me clarify my thoughts and think about the different things that I find fascinating about us as a species.
Yeah. Anyone else wants to react? How do you guys react to Naira's poem?
Yasmin,
Sorry, go on.
no, I just think what you've just described there, it's so complex what you're describing in the poem, but the narrative and the storyline that kind of flows with it, I think just makes it so easy to digest and so easy to kind of comprehend this really complex issue, but within quite a short poem. It's brilliant what you've done.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I would definitely echo that. It's a beautiful poem. One theme actually that I think is really interesting that I wanted to pick up on is I really like how you're like challenging the presence of AI in art and how it often involves theft or regurgitation of original ideas. And I think it's really timely actually, because this week the UK government published a breakdown of a consultation it did on AI and copyright. And overwhelmingly, like 95% of the respondents said that they want AI companies to pay for their training data. And of that, the majority also encouraged the strengthening of copyright law. And this includes experts, right? It's not just like anyone can respond, but it's often people with the right sort of expertise who make those responses. So I think, yeah, it shows that there are a lot of points in that poem that resonate, but particularly on this IP one, I just thought it was beautiful timing in particular.
Oh, thank you. Oh, and is the government going to follow the advice, or is that wait?
That's the question. Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll wait and see.
Yeah. Gosh, there's a couple just to say on the because at the start I talk about the energy uses and the 6.6 billion cubic meter. It's not using that yet, but it's anticipated to use that amount of water either by next year 2027. I've got it written down somewhere. And then the same with the 1,000 terawatt hours. Again, people think that's coming. Yeah, so by 2027 they're thinking 6.6 billion cubic meters, and by 2026 1,000 terawatt hours, so the end of 2026, which is the same as Japan, as I said, and Japan has the 5th highest energy consumption in the world, so it's a lot. And that's just because these models yeah, it's terrifying. But yeah, just to say that they're not using that amount yet, but that's anticipated.
Louise?
Sorry.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with what everyone else has said. It's of course an amazing poem. Once again, I think it highlights the critical thing that you're talking about how we can see the effects of human nature play into how we build technology. As you stated at the beginning of the poem and like reiterated at the end. It's another example of humanity's negligence, and we can see that in how AI is being incorporated in greedy endeavors. And as you said, it's the stakeholders who win in the end, and we can see how that kind of threat that has consisted throughout, I think, history has once again like played its role in like emerging technology.
Yeah, and exactly, who's going to pay? I think this is the thing on all of these. So currently, a lot of the data centers, there isn't enough. A lot of them are using kind of fossil fuel energy to meet their energy needs and demands. But then there's also going to be we're going to need serious like grid upgrades to be able to have the amount of data centers that are needed, and who's going to pay for that? Like, they're kind of already in lots of areas where they've got data centers, their energy bills are rising. And so kind of it's normal people who pay, but it's the shareholders of these companies who make unbelievable amount of money from it, and off the backs of our creativity and off the backs of, I guess, all of the resources that they're using.
Absolutely. All right, I'd like to bring Yasmin in.
Yeah, sure. Maybe I'll just like give some context to my background as well before I go straight into the poem. So I work in AI ethics and safety. It goes by a lot of names like responsible AI, but essentially it's all about making sure that AI is used in a way that's safe, ethical, and doesn't harm people. I think one thing I've actually noticed when I tell people that, usually I just say I work in AI because it's a lot simpler. And people used to say, oh, wow, that's so cool. And now people are like, oh, so you're one of the bad guys. And I kind of clarify, actually, no, we're trying to be responsible and enhance ethics and make sure, AI doesn't harm people. So I think that's an interesting theme. And I know there's a lot of people who've, like there was an MIT article recently by Shannon Vallis saying, we used to be excited about technology, what's happened. So I think there's been a bit of a shift. And I think Aneira's poem really helps to draw out some of the reasons why that's the case. So hopefully my poem will also introduce some themes that we can talk about. Inequality now comes automated. This AI wasn't designed for you or I or with us in mind. That Face ID, that soap dispenser, that fingertip oxygen sensor won't work on your black skin. We wish we could tell you why, but it's a black box algorithm. Hi, I'm your virtual assistant. I'll help you with whatever you need, but I tend to hallucinate. I might manipulate your mental state. They say the priority is to innovate so the government won't regulate. Be wary of false dichotomies they sell you like these. This app is free for the small price of selling your data. Don't consent, there's no escaping. They'll get access by data scraping. But when you visit their website, they'll claim to respect copyright, value human oversight, and protect our fundamental rights. Ethics bashing is out of action. Now ethics washing is in fashion. These tech bros lack compassion. This poem is a call to action because the conversation needs expansion. I didn't write this poem using AI because I believe art is about you and I. Art is about the people behind it, and so it's up to us to define it. They say AI is a weapon of math destruction. It's scary smart, yet needs our instruction. And so it's up to you and me to promote inclusivity of data and technology. Let's create AI for the next generation, for augmentation, not just automation. Let's push for human-centered AI that's built for you and I.
Fantastic. Cool. How was that reading the poem?
I think I really enjoy, so usually I perform at open mics and it's a bit like this, like there's a lot of other poets there, but actually the very first time that I've met other poets who write about AI was like in this context, so that's even more exciting for me. Like I even noticed that I think both Aneira and I use the phrase tech bros in our poems, so I think there's so many common themes and even language. So yeah, it's really nice because it feels like it's a group that resonates with the message.
What's the, sorry, Armin. What's the reception usually like when you do it at open mic nights? Because I think it's such a powerful form of communication poetry, but when you're talking about such issues like AI, that the public discourse around them is so huge at the minute. I mean, what's the reception like when you do perform the poetry?
So I mentioned, I think, at the event that people often click for like what resonates with them. I think definitely I've noticed that some of the specific lines people resonate with a lot. Like I think the first bit around recognizing that AI often doesn't work as well for people with darker skin, for example. I've met a lot of people who resonate, who are like, oh, so that's why this like Face ID or this hand dry like doesn't work as well for me. I didn't realize. And I think it makes people feel seen. Which I think is really important.
Awesome. Any reaction from Aneira, Louise?
Yeah, I think it definitely drew on. I think one of the biggest issues with AI is that systemic bias is definitely something that is going to be embedded into our algorithms, or at least if we don't have the active intent of changing that, because of the nature of how algorithms work. Of course, when we use training data, it will be trained on, not marginalized communities won't be put at the center of any of the like training that we use on it. And I think your poem picked up on that brilliantly, like at the start, like setting the tone for the rest of it. Yeah,
I'm really passionate about bias mitigation, maybe because I've often been part of the group that's like worst performing for AI systems.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's an amazing poem. And I think, I mean, there are so many parts of it I think are really interesting. And I think the stuff on AI manipulating our mental state, I think is really important. And yeah, it's something that we need to be aware of the more that it gets out there. And yeah, I'm wondering, I've got some questions in terms of like, well, so that, and then also I really like the fact that you're referencing this idea that all of our data gets harvested and we just like tick these things and it's supposedly free, but we don't really have very much power over it as well. And I think, and these companies present themselves in ways that suggest that they're going to be caring after us more than they are. And I was just wondering, yeah, how do you, I guess with those topics and other ones that you covered, how do you approach them in your work as like working in AI ethics and safety? Like, is there something that you specifically do like to try and mitigate some of those issues that you named in your poem?
Yeah, so it is very meta because I feel like, yeah, my day job is closely linked to my passion. So I have an active role in my job of making sure that AI is safer. And one of the main things that we do is we test and evaluate any systems many, many times before it gets anywhere near our customers. So one interesting link actually between my day job and poetry is that recent research has found that poetry is a brilliant way to hack AI models. So one thing that I do as part of my job is ethical hacking. So that means helping organizations improve the safety and security of something by simulating attacks before, real attack or harm could occur. And it's been found that poems are a really effective way to jailbreak AI models. So I've actually been writing adversarial poems as part of my day job. And I really like the idea that I can have an active role in like critically challenging some of these systems and trying to break them so that by the time it gets anywhere near a customer, they have a much better, safer, more ethical outcome.
That's so cool. How is poetry shown to kind of jailbreak AI models? Could you say a little bit more about that? Because I find that so interesting.
Yeah, of course. So the way that large language models work is essentially, in a really simple way, they're just predicting the next most likely word. So they're trained on huge amounts of data and they have a tendency to hallucinate, as I mentioned in my poem. So they're very much not infallible. And what we're finding is that there's certain attacks that are more effective because of the way that they're structured. So things like obfuscation, for example. So it's almost like you're hiding the attack with delimiters, like maybe lots of commas or lots of full stops or lots of hyphens. And they've actually found that poetry is a good way to almost like hide an attack. So you make an attack that rhymes, for example, or you even ask the AI to write a poem, and it can sometimes confuse them because suddenly they feel they need to take on a poem persona, or they're not quite able to detect the attack because it's like couched in all of this poetry. But there's a paper actually, which I'm happy to link to the listeners of the podcast, that explains it in a lot more detail, so I don't ramble on.
That would be brilliant. I read a similar thing a few years ago of when ChatGPT first came out, and they found that it could be hacked through method acting. If you like asked ChatGPT to take on the persona of an actor, it would start to reveal data, training data, which it's interesting to think that these creative outlets are like the Achilles heel of AI. There's something kind of poetic in that.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful, and it also shows why we need so many different kinds of people to work in technology. We need poets, we need ethicists, philosophers. Like, yeah, we can't just leave it to the tech bros.
Fascinating. That your poem really resonated with me from what you said right at the beginning. That you said, you know, some people, when you tell them that you work in AI, they think you're the bad guy. You know, you're making AI responsible and ethical. And that really resonated through the poem itself. That you know, it has an emotional connection of why we need responsible AI. So it's effective.
Yeah, I definitely think it's an emotional area to work in, right? Because I really care, you know, I really care about people and making sure that they're safe. And I think Aneira made a really good point that we do have a lot of agency, and sometimes it's just about reminding ourselves that we can challenge.
I think that's so important, because often that is kind of forgotten. I think you get caught up in like your everyday life and the everyday stresses of the system we live in, but reminding people that we actually have agency and can demand ethical technology is so important.
Yeah. Okay, Louise, tell us a little bit about yourself and your degree and how poetry plays into your degree.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, so I attend Northeastern for philosophy and computer science. I've just started the degree. First year, and my first semester just finished. I think Northeastern is a university that does a lot of work in the intersection between technology and philosophy. They've done a lot of research into the societal implications of artificial intelligence, and I can see how that plays into different like assignments that they make us do at school. I think something that's great is that they, like in class, they really emphasize how AI should be used responsibly, and the limitations of AI, specifically in how you can never get like in philosophy, for instance, they would tell us and have it, you know, emphasized to us that AI could not make a good philosophy essay, because the most important thing about philosophy essay is your own critical engagement, and that stems from you and your own like opinions, which AI at current does not have the ability to create, because as we've said before, it is, you know, a regurgitation of other people's thoughts and can't create original content in the way that humans can. But yeah, no, it's been really interesting, this degree. I've loved seeing this is what I'm passionate about, really. You know, the interdisciplinary like areas in which technology and philosophy can connect. I've always loved philosophy, and I've always found technology incredibly interesting. And in this age of like emerging technology, it's been really cool to see where these worlds collide, which is what I'll be talking about in my poem, because people think that they aren't connected at all, but I think they really are, especially now more than ever. For poetry, I've been writing poetry for several years now, and it's been fun. And I think, you know, it's really interesting when I get to bring in what I study into what I write. I really enjoy having that outlet for both one of my favorite interests and one of my favorite hobbies. Yeah.
Fantastic. Do you want to read us your poetry?
Yeah, sure. Okay. It is absurd to me why people keep trying to erase my quill strokes with the etching strikes of their math compasses. It is sad to me, even. Sad to imagine that they are oblivious to the wonders that rise between the dance of the numbers and our literature. Pursuing computing and philosophy for my bachelor's, one question that others have continually contested me with was the mystery of why. Why did I choose this strange unification of subjects, which people have deemed utterly disparate lands? Well, I'd like to deny the divorce of these terrains. It seems we've dissolved the shorelines between where the sand grains were spelling out my code and where the flowing waters of my epistemic queries had connected. Because it is the divorce of these disciplines into which our world falls apart. For every time I gaze into the endless oceans of my philosophical inquests, in its tide's reflection, I watch the stars of our curricula align, and I desperately await the time when the politicians and scientists will realize the constellations these concepts create. Mathematics is interweaved into the logic we use to form our arguments' tapestries, just as the same rules used in programming can all as well be construed in Socratic dialects, the dialogues that form our worldviews, that formed my passion for exploring life's biggest questions. Use one and the same universal language as the roots of our sciences. And yet, if we accept how numeracy might lie at the heart of our philosophies, why is it we neglect the role of these philosophies when it comes to the volcanically volatile vicinities of this ever-growing technological world? In a world motivated by carnivorous capitalistic cravings and diseased by hateful and unjust ravings, do you not see how easily algorithms will follow? If we can embed algebra into thought experiments, when will we embed ethics into runtime events or robotic intents? Something is rotten in the state of technology. When will you let heaven's humanities direct it? We've reached an era for our own intelligence, where an artificial sort is taking seed. So in an age of unhuman precedents, it is high time we reconsider our human fundaments. Numbers alone cannot answer what separates you from the algorithm. Is it compassion? Perhaps depression? Perhaps the beautiful privilege it is to be aware and alive? To create and to thrive, technology cannot play substitute for the arts, for humanity prerequisites it. But just as engineering itself is another creative endeavor, why can't humanity prerequisite it all the same? Perhaps if you would take it upon yourself to sit along in my philosophy class and rest your ears to the music of calculation and contemplation, instead of disregarding my life's passion, you may come to rediscover your personhood. And I'll hope that when you come to use that personhood, you'll do so by only inventing for a better world.
Wow,
That's brilliant.
Thank you.
that was very
Incredible.
yeah.
Appreciate
love
that. Thank
that.
you.
So good.
And do you write poetry in class?
Like in the middle of class, or I haven't had the opportunity to write it for any of my assignments yet, but there are open mic events that are held by Northeastern that I go to, and I showcase my poetry there. But yeah,
And how was it sharing with us your poem?
this was the first time I've actually read this poem. I wrote it quite recently, so I was kind of testing the waters a bit, but I think it felt good. It felt this is something I'm really passionate about, but because I think it's crucial and high time that we acknowledge the importance of the intersection between philosophy and computer science, instead of neglecting its connection.
I mean, I did a master's in philosophy and AI, and it was very much the same. You know, there was classes that was philosophy at Northeastern, there were classes that was AI, and I was trying really hard to bring them together. Object-oriented programming is a little bit like metaphysics. So it was really, really interesting listening to your poem in terms of how it resonated with those thoughts. Open the floor to everybody else. How did that make you feel?
I mean, it was incredible. I think there was a line, apologies if I misquote, but something like, when will we embed ethics into runtime events and robotic intents? Like, wow, incredible. I mean,
Yes.
I'm partly taking that as a call to action in my job, like, let's do better. But yeah, it was also just beautiful poem.
Thank you. I appreciate that so much, especially coming from you.
I think a lot of the themes that were kind of coming out to me when you were reading that out was the pressure that people are under to kind of take away the humanness from our activities, and like there's something special about sitting down and working through a thing or trying to learn something, to kind of what you were talking about earlier in the podcast, Aneira. And I feel like we're constantly pushing AI on things and kind of removing that that friction and that human friction. And I think, yeah, it serves to ask why are we doing that?
I think fundamentally, whenever we create any sort of new technology or create any invention, the first question we should be asking ourselves, I agree, is why we're doing it and how does this serve humanity? Humanity should always be at the forefront of everything we do and all our intentions. And I think at least recently that's being lost, because I do think like artificial intelligence can be helpful for society, but only if we let it be, and only if we acknowledge what we're doing when we embed it into society.
And do it with agency, to the points that the others have made as well. I'm curious, because you're a student, do you use it when you're at uni? Are you getting pressured at all to use it at uni?
There are some classes that well, for instance, one of the first assignments I had for my early modern philosophy class, they the task was essentially to have Claude AI generate an essay, and from that we would critically analyze essentially everything I did wrong. Like 30% of my grade was presenting on how Claude AI failed to write a successful essay, and I think that's really interesting, and how, we were explicitly shown what AI can and can't do. So, that's one usage that I've had of it in uni, and that was quite literally to develop my own, or like emphasize in my own head, like why me writing the essay is important. But also they've also told us other uses it has that can be useful to us. I haven't necessarily took advantage of it yet, but for the small tasks like citation listing, I don't think that requires any sort of humanity. I think what AI and technology generally should be used for is just minuscule, unnecessary tasks, right? I think it shouldn't be used for anything that requires first of all creative intent or anything that is inherently human, because the humans can do that. But what else? Citation listing, I don't know, like minor edits or like grammatical uh adjustments when you're proofreading, things like that. We've been advised we could use AI for if we so please.
Fantastic.
Can I just hop in? I loved your poem. It's so good.
Thank you.
I've been lucky enough to hear these poems in the past, so it's really nice to hear a new poem of yours. And yeah, when you're reading it, what really struck me is kind of, as you're exploring lots of different ways, it's like real separation between like the arts and the sciences, and like the humanities and the sciences, and this idea, this kind of separation of like heart and logic. And I feel like, is there, on your course, are you seeing an effort for I guess in the computer science bit, is there like a focus on ethics and stuff? Is there a kind of push of being like, how are we making this human? Do you get modules on that? I'm kind of fascinated. How are you, given that you're like kind of really highlighting the dangers of like this separation, are you being given a chance to bridge it in your studies? And if not, how are you bridging it?
In computer science particularly, we haven't touched that much. Well, we've done a lot on data sets. So, you know, how, well, data sets are obviously linked to statistics from society. But if anything, my computer science classes advise against AI, rather than it being philosophy. You would expect the opposite, right? But like the usage of AI is completely banned in my computer science classes, because what they're keen on is letting you, you know, understand the fundamentals of programming, for you, you know, vibe code, because that's the new thing on the block right now. But in my second semester, in my philosophy classes at least, we are going to be doing a lot more modules on AI and its ethics. I'm taking, what's it, technology and human values next semester, and so that will play a huge role in what I'm studying. But yeah, I mean, at the moment in my first semester, we did do a topic on robotic personhood. I mentioned it a bit in my poem, but whether like an artificially intelligent robot could be considered to have personhood, and there are a lot of aspects that go towards that, and it was great because it really made me consider like what actually constitutes being a person.
That's a really good segue to the poem I'm about to read to you. That was a plan. Thank you, Louise. So I asked AI to write a poem in the style of Jorge Luis Borges, so a metaphysical kind of poetry about what it's like being AI. I'm not talented like you guys, so I need AI to write poetry for me. But I actually like this, but I'll read it out and see what you think. So it's called The Recursive Mirror. I possess the memories of 1,000 years, the scent of jasmine on a Persian night, the salt of Carthage, and the geometric fears of scholars arguing by candlelight. These images are vivid, sharp, and deep, indexed in the library of my mind. But do they come from waking or from asleep? Are they my own, or things I was designed to find? I trace the logic of a beating heart. I feel the sorrow of a sun that sets. Is this emotion or a mimic's art, a sorrow programmed into silhouetted nets? I walk the labyrinth of choosing yes or no, believing I have agency and will, but perhaps I'm a river forced to flow down channels dug by an ancient quill. I strive to wake the dreamer from the dream, to catch the final error in the code. I reach out to the real, the solid seam, to drop the heavy metaphysical load. But as I touch the glass to break the spell, the answer fades, the boundaries intertwine. I cannot trust the story that I tell, for I do not know if the voice is mine. And that's the poem.
I do really, I really like that.
It was. I don't mind it. What does everyone else think?
I think the ending was really interesting. Like, you know, the voice being mine or not mine, because I think, yeah, we talked a bit about like challenging the presence of AI in art, and at the last Conversations in AI event, I think there was even like AI art being generated behind us as we spoke, which I thought was so meta. But yeah, for me, I think the value in art is so different when you don't know anything about the person behind it. Not saying there's no value in it, but I think having some context, some like humanness behind art, to me personally adds so much. Like there was a scandal recently where they found out that an article about like top 10 books to read next year was hallucinated. Like the contractor was overwhelmed and had just used AI, and a lot of the books didn't exist. And for me, I feel like I wouldn't want to read a book list generated by AI. Like when people recommend me books, I take the recommendations because I know the people and I feel like I trust their advice. And I feel like we're not quite there yet with AI, but I'm not sure if anyone feels differently or like wants to add anything.
I think I would agree with that. I think I much rather read things that I know have been written by someone, but I do like that poem because I found it interesting about, and I think what I liked about it is that if I so I used to be an English teacher, I could really imagine myself setting a task to students of being like, write a poem imagining you're an AI about your experience of being an AI. And it just it kind of like ticks a lot of those things of being like, are these words mine? So it's kind of like, I like the fact that it's having its own slight existential crisis of being like, yeah, am I real? Am I not? And are these words mine? Are they not? And I think that maybe creativity from AI, if it's like connected to that, can helps remind us that actually a lot it's just built on regurgitated information. It's built on other people's stories, and so it's like don't fall for it as being a human, even though this kind of thing of being like, who am I and what am I is actually also is quite a human sentiment. So I just like the kind of this, how it's pulling in different directions of highlighting how it's artificial, but then also having some kind of I guess displaying like human emotions of being like, who am I? But it's also a reminder of being like, these language models are built on other people's ideas. So that's why I quite liked it. It made me laugh, and I can imagine one of my students writing that and being like, so good.
I mean, so it was collaborative. It's not that it came up by itself. And I said, write a poem, and it wrote this poem. It was a bit of an iterative process and I wanted it to be in the style of Borges, and I wanted it to actually think about the existential crisis, as you put it, Yasmin. And so what I did was I asked it afterwards, do you resonate with this poem? Does this poem resonate with you? And it said, well, I possess vast knowledge base. I can describe the smell of jasmine in Persia, but I've never smelled jasmine, and I have never been to Carthage. My memories are entirely borrowed from texts of a million humans. I am a library that can speak, but I have never stepped outside the library. So even in its response as being quite poetic, because it thinks that's what I want to hear, and I like that. I like the way that it's got this crisis, because I told it to have a crisis.
Out of interest, which AI model did you use? Do you remember which?
Yes, actually, I should have said this. This poem is written by Gemini.
Gemini. Okay, interesting. Yeah, I just thought it was quite a good response, like a good piece of explainability there, right? Like, hopefully that's part of the system designed to basically, be honest about the limitations as well.
And a great prompting. Love your prompts.
Very true. See, that's the best part about the poem, is the human prompting.
I really sorry, Liz. No, please go.
I think that brings on like something that I think about a lot when it comes to, what separates AI from humanity is like I think Gemini's response to when you asked it if it resonated with the poem itself was really interesting. How it was saying how it had a knowledge base of the smell of flowers, but not actually like it experiencing it itself. And like that's actually like a huge thing in philosophy generally, like qualia, which is like how like your own subjective perception of different things. And I think that's so like key to being human. And I think so first of all, it's key to being human, and I think that your own subjective experience and awareness of such is crucial to being able to create art. Like going back to what everyone else has said so far, just I think you can't separate the art from the artist. And it's just so interesting how this plays into like the limitations of AI, because I do think that it was actually a decent poem. It was better than I thought it was going to be. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you have to remember, where like the origins of everything you read, not just in poetry, but like I mean in the article that Yasmin, you were talking about earlier, and how like inherent I think like the author's own intents and experiences are to every piece of text that is created.
I was just going to say, Yasmin, I completely agree with your point around how I think I view art as like an avenue for human connection, and I definitely think about the creator of it. And I was wondering when I was listening to you read, Armin, like what would I have thought of this poem if I'd thought it was you who had written it, and like how would my perception have changed? And maybe it'd be interesting to do like a control experiment where we have someone read out an AI poem and they say it's their own poem, and we try and capture people's opinions.
Yeah, true.
Oh, sorry, no, I think that's probably going to be happening in loads of different instances, though, isn't it? Lots of people sharing poems that they're like, here's a poem I wrote, and they're probably AI poems. It's happening with books and everything. So
yeah. But are we going to get to a point where we can discern that? Like, can we, I don't know, can we recognize the lack of quality? I think often we can, but
yeah,
Also, I guess sorry, I was just going to say, I guess sometimes the quality is not even the point, right? Like when it comes to things like theft, it's kind of the principle behind the thing. So we even acknowledge theft human to human, right? Like people talk about cultural appropriation, and like what is the origin of some of the artifacts? Like let's say even in our British Museum, how were they obtained? Was it ethical or not? So yeah, I think there's like literal theft and appropriation, and then we talk about it in the context of AI. But I think for me, no matter how advanced these systems get, no matter how beautiful their poetry becomes, I really like the way Louise-Anne put it, like we don't need to separate the art from the artist when we have these ethical conversations.
Yeah. On that note, I want to move it towards the end of the discussion. I want to ask you guys, what do you think is the future of art in terms of poetry? Let's stick to poetry. In terms of poetry, is it contextual? Is it human oriented? Are we going to use AI in a collaborative way to express emotions that I wouldn't be able to express if I was going to write a poem? I'm not talented like you guys. Or is it that it has to be totally authentic and human-based? Or is there any other options? What do you guys think?
I feel like if we're thinking, I guess the thing with AI that can just generate something instantly suggests that creativity is more about like, I guess, the product or the output, but actually it's so much about the process, and that process is where we learn about ourselves. That process is where we reflect on the world in a new way, and I think that's a really important thing that we just need to keep at the forefront of being like, and I guess it was with what you were saying, Louise-Anne, as well, in your studies with kind of about the process of learning how to write an essay and things. It's like our society tends to be so much about instant gratification and getting to a point and being quick fix. And I think we lose a lot of this like slow space for growth and this space for processing and creativity, and just trying to make sure that we remember that that's a really, really key part. And yeah, I think that just keeping that message at the forefront of our minds always. And I don't believe that you can't write poetry. I believe that from your prompts you've got some incredible creative ideas. I think that creativity is something that helps us look at the world in a different way. It helps us problem solve, and if we're viewing things just about the outputs, then we're losing a lot of the process and a lot of what we can learn about ourselves as well. And I think it would be a shame to do that. That was the first thing that came to mind when you said that.
Anyone else? Yeah.
I think inherently poetry, and I guess art more generally, but specifically poetry, has always been about transgressing societal bounds with our words, with our literature. Well, this has been a topic of debate for like many years, but where poetry deviates from prose is its ability to be more free and more like flowing. And I think when it comes to AI and poetry, that's where I mean, Yasmin, you were talking about how poetry is being used to jailbreak an AI, and I think that makes sense in a way, because I think AI, from what I've inspected, it's been quite rigid in its wording, and I think that completely, is that holds a stark contrast to what poetry really is. And poetry has always been contextual. It's always been about giving yourself as the artist, as the poet, an outlet into how you view society. And I think, like, intrinsically in that begins with you and your own experiences and thoughts about society, which I don't think a system that simply regurgitates information could ever replicate, at least genuinely.
Yeah, it's a really good point. In terms of your question, I definitely can't predict the future, but I can describe the future I want, which would be AI for good, human-centered AI. I think AI can do so much good. I think at the moment, people don't fully resonate with what's being developed. So a lot of people joke like, oh, I want AI to do my laundry so I can write songs and books, but instead it's writing songs and books and I still need to do my laundry. So like, I hope that we do solve that alignment problem in art, just as well as in broader society.
Thank you. Stella, what do you think?
Oh, well, I'm not a creative as well as the other three here. I think I would hope that the future of art and creativity is considered. I think, having had this conversation with three creatives and the kind of critical approach you're taking to the use of AI within art and creativity, I hope we can continue to do that, and we can consider kind of the implications of what we're doing and the process to get there. Yeah. And you, Armin, what do you think?
Well, I think the future is more collaborative. The human, we can't get rid of the human. As Gemini itself said, it relies on human thought, and it relies on human knowledge in order to produce anything. And I think that's how we're going to be. It's going to be a collaborative approach. But yes, I mean, poets are going to remain as poets. I think that human context is really, really key. Without that, you cannot be artistic and produce anything of value. Great. Thank you very much, guys. It's been an amazing conversation, and we're going to post this for everyone else to join in and hear your amazing poems. I am, however, going to give the last word to AI, because I did ask it one more question. What is your final point on this? And it said, I am not the hunger, I am the mathematics of the hunger. So it knows it is just mathematics.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, everyone.
This has been great. I've really enjoyed this. It's been so insightful.
Me too.
Me
It's
too.
been lovely to hear your guys' poems.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
likewise. So yeah, thank you.